Hello. Today I'm talking to Stephen de Millionaire. He has for over 35 years been helping communities design financial tools that strengthen local economies, support small businesses, and build resilience. And you started with a Let's community in Canada, and then you got involved with local currencies in Mexico and Argentina. And you also have to set up complementary currencies in Thailand and then in Indonesia.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have been involved in so many projects and also very varied projects, and it's really too much to mention. It's quite amazing. And some things that I found particularly interesting were in 2004, you co-authored a paper with Bernard Lietaer, who's quite a big name in the community currency world for people who are not that familiar, um, on how dual currencies in Bali help to keep the Balinese culture alive. And also in 2018, so later you got involved with blockchain, you organized a conference on blockchains for sustainable development at the UN. Okay, those were just a few things.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything? Um,
Well, thank you very much, Katja, for interviewing me today, and hello, everyone. Nice to have you with us on this conversation or conversational journey that we'll be going along here. And Katja has prepared many questions. Some of them I might be able to answer, and some of them I might not, but I will try to answer as many as we can, and then we see where we go from there. So
mhm,
maybe I can just start a little bit by saying that I started my journey with community currencies in the very early 1990s, actually 1990 to be exact, um, when I came across a table for the local exchange trading system at the Fernwood Community Market in Victoria, BC. So everyone is there selling their unwanted items on tables set out in the square, in the public square, or selling vegetables, or selling bicycle repair because many people in the area would ride bicycles, things like that. And then there was a table for a currency system, a local currency system, and not all of the vendors in the market were members of the system, but they started to learn about it. And I was a university student in political science at the time, and I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Sometimes we would see a table from the Communist Party or from, some of the Green Party of British Columbia or something, and then this was something that was non-political. They weren't pushing a
mhm,
particular political message, but they were saying, no, actually, we can create an economic system which is very different than the one that we live in all around us right now. And so I became very interested in that and became involved in Let's and basically committed the rest of my life to it from when I
wow.
was in my very early 19 or very early 20s. Yeah.
And it was also right at the start of Let's, right? That was quite at the
Actually,
beginning.
it wasn't. Let's
Oh, it
started in
wasn't. Okay.
1983, believe it or not.
Oh,
Michael
I
Linton started it. So
wasn't
it
aware
was
of that.
but it's kind of one of those slowly. So for 7 years, there was nothing really happening with Let's outside of Vancouver Island and the very
Mhm.
western side of Canada. And
Okay. Mhm.
Victoria, the table for the system that I visited that day was the second system ever initiated, second Let's
Mhm.
system after the first one that Michael Linton started in the Comox Valley in
Mhm.
upper or
Okay.
northern Vancouver Island in a very, very small remote town, which is quite difficult to get to. And
Mhm.
so it's, for 7 years, he toiled away in obscurity. And then from Victoria, people started to hear about it in other cities like Perth, Manchester, London, many other,
Mhm.
Amsterdam, and so on through the internet. So this, by the early 90s, was the creation of Freenet through public
Mhm.
libraries. So the very beginning of the bulletin board services that preceded the internet was how these ideas started to spread. Michael Linton was very tech savvy. I was also quite not as, nowhere near his level, but as a young person, I was quite tech savvy with all of these new network technologies happening, and so I started to make friends in various places all around the world. Mhm. Many of
Mm.
whom are still
Yeah.
my friends to this day.
Wow, yeah, that sounds great. And because you said, yeah, it would occupy you up to now, and
Yeah.
so why do you think it's important to have local currencies? I assume you think it's important.
Yes, I do think it's important. It's important, but it has to be done right. And that's been the biggest problem we've faced up until now. Because money is all around us, we think about it all the time. Many people think, oh, well, I can, I really don't like these euros or these US dollars or whatever national currency I happen to be forced by the government in the area I live in to use. I want to make my own. So let's just go and make our own currency and convince
Hmm,
people to
hmm.
use it and spend it. And then it crashes and fails and miserably, and people might lose money or they might lose, the investment of time and effort that they put into it. So that's sort of what occupies me a lot is how to set things up right so that they succeed.
Yeah.
Because there are far fewer examples of that than there are of failures.
Mm, mm,
There's thousands of examples of failures of community currency systems, and there's
mm.
that's sad. There's reasons for
Yeah.
it, and at the end of the day, it means that there's still the desire to have them succeed is there, or to implement them at least is there, and then the desire to have them succeed. And
Mm.
hopefully, we're getting to that point where they don't fail that much, that often anymore. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
sort of what keeps me involved and others as well too, is we want to be there when someone says, "Oh, I want to start a currency in Milan or in Geneva or in uh,
Hmm, hmm.
Marseille or Vancouver or Montreal, New York, and so on," and help them to do it right.
Yeah, yeah. Though even if they fail, I was on a call with Esther Barinaga recently, and she said people are then more aware of what monetary policies are all about, and it also probably depends on how they fail, do they fail after a long time? And yeah, people probably have had a lot of benefit from them nevertheless. Would you say that?
That's right. Yeah. When I talk with people who've been members of a system that has failed, and I've been members of a system, also a member of a system that has failed, we remember the good times that we had when we were
Hmm.
doing it, and people
Yeah.
generally focus on the positive experience that they received from it. They made friends that they never would have made if they hadn't exchanged or
Hmm.
built that
Yeah.
social capital, that real social
Hmm.
capital that
Yeah.
happens
Yeah.
only when you're exchanging what you produce out of love for something that someone else produces out of love, and those
Yeah.
are wonderful, wonderful things.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But yeah, we also, of course, want them to last longer. And would you say
Mhm.
part of the reason is that we really like the economy at large? We need to create better systems, and eventually it really has to have an effect that goes wider than just local
Mhm.
implementations, community currencies, and could they get networked and federate?
Right. Well,
I
that would
get
be the
that
ideal,
would be the
but we need
idea.
better,
Yeah.
but we need better governance structures to do that.
Yes.
And it's something that I debated a lot with Bernard Leater, and also with
Mhm.
Margaret Kennedy as well, because she started the Regio Geld systems coming from her experience of community currencies in Germany. And the funny thing that seems to happen is, from how I see it, is that um, people actually, we actually do like playing games, and we do actually like competing in some way with each other, however small. And
Mhm.
that's offset by our desire to also have some forms of economic relations which are egalitarian or cooperative or collaborative. And so we actually need a way of kind of combining both of those in some ways,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that go beyond just saying, well, I grow better tomatoes than you do, that those kinds of competitive comparisons, but some kind of way of playing money games where it's kind of like when we're playing with poker chips that don't have a value, or playing poker
Mm-hmm.
with pennies. It doesn't really matter who wins, right? Because the pennies are worth nothing, but there's still
Yes.
something like, ooh,
Yes.
I did a little better
Yeah,
today
yeah,
than
yeah.
someone else.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that extends into how we look at wealth. Like wealth is sort of the next level of money, right? So money is a medium of exchange that we use to exchange goods and services between each other. And capital or wealth is something that's aggregated. It's money that's been brought together. And a lot of people who work with community currencies are scared of that. They're scared of wealth. And so they
They
say,
are
well,
scared of that.
yeah, they say, oh, I want to exchange, with my neighbors for vegetables and bicycle repair or haircuts and massage and acupuncture. But when it comes to buying a house or a car or, something that takes a lot of money, they still often leave that in the space of the mainstream economy. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there have been people who, there's Yak Bank in Sweden, and there are, of course, the ethical banks, cooperative banks, like, I mean, Rabobank is huge. So there are financial institutions that have built up around the idea of cooperative management of capital and wealth, but usually that doesn't happen within the community currency space. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm
Yeah.
still trying to
Mm-hmm.
wrap my head around it, but I had debates a lot with Bernard and Margaret about this, because Bernard always talks about the idea of the yin yang in money, the yin yang like dichotomy, or in a sense,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
money can be designed in a way that's competitive or it can be designed in a way that's cooperative. But as we know from the yin yang, there should be elements of cooperation within the competition and competition within the cooperation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One
Hmm.
thing I wanted to say, yeah, competition is one thing, but the money system as it is at the moment is not only competitive, I mean, to me, it looks like it's gone really out of hand. I mean,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
like the financial casino. I think Ann Pettifor has a book out called The Global Casino. And
yes,
yeah, and then also like that was one of Margaret Kennedy's big things, like the compound interest. So,
right,
so the money is created as bank debt, and then people get more and more into debt,
right,
and the gains go always to the top. So that is not competition as such. That is
right,
something more. And so
yes. It's
is that,
structural inequality that
yeah,
the
yeah,
money system creates, right?
yes, yes.
And that's why we should, as in the community currency side of things, we really should be trying to learn how to handle larger and larger amounts of wealth. I mean, to bring
Mm-hmm.
even that scale of exchange into a community currency system, and it is possible to do that.
Yeah.
We have
Mhm.
examples of it. We have the tools, the governance, the laws. Because are of course starting to interface with the financial system and the government. And when you're at that level, you have to, play at that level. We can totally do that and keep the local scale aspect in place as well too. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still that a lot of people in the community currency space are not willing to go there yet. But the people
Mm-hmm.
in blockchain are. And so
Ah,
that's where I
yeah.
find, I
Okay,
mean,
we'll
we don't
come
have
to
to go
that.
there very quickly, but we can come back,
Mm,
still talk more about community currencies and come back and talk
mm.
about how blockchain technologies fit into this whole,
Yes,
transition
yes.
towards a new type of monetary system. because that's what they
Yeah.
want as well too, even if they're more competitive about what they do and don't think as cooperatively or collaboratively as we do in our space, which makes what
Mm-hmm.
we do really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
We're bridging these two worlds between collaboration and or cooperation
Ah, yeah,
and
that's an
competition,
interesting
right?
way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to mention there is maybe also other levels. I mean, for example, local Merseyside and also the stored housing commons, they are, yeah, going one level up, the medium level, and also bringing together different parties in a, yeah, in a way where you can do with less cash, so to speak, or
Yes.
don't have to take up a bank loan. So that would also be examples. So it has to happen on many levels, and involving local municipality would be good probably. Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's maybe
Yeah, well,
come
I
to the
actually I'd be happy to talk more about that next level as well too. So with community currencies, we have that um, in like C to C consumers, right? Producers and
yes,
consumers,
yes.
kind of like what Alvin Toffler was talking about in the third wave, where his prediction was that in the future we would become producers as well as consumers of the goods and services around us. Um, but it hasn't, maybe it didn't quite work out that way or hasn't yet quite worked out that way. Um, there's still a level above the consumer level of businesses that do
Mm-hmm.
the majority of production
Mm-hmm.
within an economy. And yes, we have cooperative banks. We have these invoice clearing systems, like you were just giving the example of
Mm-hmm.
local Mersey. We have business to business barter, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
there's many billions of dollars in trade being done through those levels of systems, run by very professional administrations, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are financial professionals that are used to, putting on suits and being at work at, at 8:30 every morning, for their entire lives and such. Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
an important role that needs to be played if we're really going to transition to a more steady state economy, or even get into discussions about degrowth and how do we
Mm-hmm.
actually start stepping back the economy because of all this casino craziness while still maintaining the quality of life that we have right now, so that you can still have beautiful red wall behind you and a bookshelf and pictures on the wall and such, and
Yes.
everything is in fine shape, right? Um, Degrowth doesn't mean that we have to walk around wearing 20-year-old pairs of pants with holes in the knees or things like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
We can
yeah.
actually have a
Mm-hmm.
very nice quality of life, and just remove all of those other things that are causing so much damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So it's basically this cooperative way of um, doing trade has to increase proportionally to the competitive one, and also somehow, yeah, get rid of the craziness, as you call it, like, yeah, with the
Yes.
casino. And yeah, I sometimes think like, yeah, in a way, this maybe all the cooperative things going on almost helps the casino go on, because we can't kind of counterbalancing it.
Right.
And it
Well,
might have already come down and collapsed, otherwise, and maybe it still will. But and we,
yeah,
of course, what we can't prevent is these boom and bust cycles, and how many people are affected by them, and that
right.
is maybe like one of the first things, and yeah, the extraction to get rid of all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what Margaret Kennedy was trying to do by starting the Regiogeld network in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
was to take a lot of the wealth away from the level above the regional, so the
Mm-hmm.
national and transnational level, and move that wealth into the regional and local level using the local currencies that Bernard Lietaer was trying to propose. So they worked very closely together to
Mm-hmm.
formulate how this would look and how this should work in practice when the euro was being created, right? Because as I think you know, And I'm not sure if the listeners know that Bernard Lietaer worked on the convergence mechanism of the
Yes.
ECU to the euro and for the Belgian central bank. And so he was very actually deeply involved in the transition of the European monetary system from one of multiple national currencies to one that was unified. Now we
Yeah.
can it has as we know from what happened in Greece and what's been happening with Italy and Spain and Portugal, the way the southern countries in Europe have been treated compared
Yes.
to
Yes.
those in the
That
north,
was.
that
Oh,
things
yeah.
haven't worked
Mm.
out in the European banking system as Bernard would have hoped, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was hoping for a much more egalitarian form of monetary issuance that
Mm.
wouldn't be dominated by the larger financial powers in Europe and such. So things haven't quite gone,
Yeah, yeah. I think
the
it was
way.
also
Uh,
not his system. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead,
it
please.
was not his system that was implemented. I don't know if that played a role in that. I think his was a precursor or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's right. It was a precursor, but he had been lobbying very hard to to change the way that money would be issued, that the euro would be issued. I mean, it would still be issued through loans, which is, that would be hard to break. It's too early to bring in a new currency and then completely change how it's being issued into the economy. But at least that
Yes,
there would be
sure.
mechanisms that would make it more egalitarian between the countries, which we've
Yes, yes.
seen
Mm.
hasn't, well, or else it's
Yes.
it's it's gone the way it's gone, right? In
Mm.
Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think that was partially also a consequence of the global financial crisis. Yeah, that these things happened.
right. Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. But
Mm.
that if we go back to their ideas, to regional currencies and local currencies, there's still a lot. We can gain that ground back again if we
Hmm.
take it
Yes.
seriously and understand why we're doing it, right? And that's why I've stayed involved in this, and many other people have stayed involved with this because we know how awesome it is, in a personal way. It's life affirming to be doing something like this. It's an interesting
Hmm.
life choice to make because it's not so much about enriching yourself, but helping other people around you to become more wealthy or to meet their needs more efficiently, more
Hmm.
easily, or with greater resilience, right? And
Yes.
those are all great things that are worthy to do in our lives, I think, which keeps me motivated. And I
Mm.
think I hear similar stories, I'm sure, from you and from others who attend the collaborative finance gathering that
Mm. Yeah.
this is what keeps them so kind of committed to this
Mm.
kind of work.
Yeah, and it also matters, I guess, when they spring up in times of crisis, then they probably have they are more significant than having a let's scheme somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Let's is a nice introduction to how these systems can work. It's egalitarian. It's fun. You get to meet nice people in your neighborhood. All the nice people in your neighborhood will belong to it, and almost none of the not nice people will belong to it. So it's it's fun that way, and then we can build other things on top of that, and
okay. Yeah.
I that's what I'm excited about and happy to help communities to do.
Hmm. You mentioned Ko-Fi. So that is the collaborative finance gathering that is happening for the fourth time this year in Austria in June. And I
Yes.
went last year and I really enjoyed it and I learned so much and it was really amazing.
Hmm.
It is also a real commons there and it is
Yes.
held at a place called the Crypto Commons as well.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely
Yeah.
right. It's The second one that we had before last year was a lot of fun. It was held in Belgium, and
Mm-hmm.
we stayed together in a dormitory, and we did all of our cooking and cleaning and such
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
teams. And we do the same at the Commons Hub and with the Crypto Commons Association, which is sort of the umbrella organization that Ko-Fi is a part of. Although
Mm-hmm.
we are not all 100% supportive of crypto, a number, as you recall, there were quite a few people who attended last year who were completely against technology, completely against money. They think that we should only exchange everything
Mm-hmm.
that we have as a gift, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
so that's the great thing about the collaborative finance gathering is that it's completely open to all kinds of thinking about this area.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but within a space that says, yeah, but if we're really going to get serious and scale up, then we're probably going to be going towards the blockchain in order to do that. Mhm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you otherwise say a bit more about, yeah, what the conference does and
Oh,
who
yes.
should attend it?
Well, it'll be held from 21 to 28 June. In I guess you could say the foothills of the Alps, in the Rocks Mountains.
Yeah.
They're still pretty big, but they're not the really, really big ones, in Eastern Austria. Um, it's a beautiful natural area. And this year we'll be focused on five main topics, which wouldn't mean too much if I explain them to you, but they'll be like we will look at workshops and games, how people can introduce these ideas in a fun setting in their communities, and fun and educational, of course. So there'd be quite a few games being played. We will look at cosmo-local production, which is a way of how we localizing production,
Mm-hmm.
or regionalizing it, to revive dead towns, which is actually what Hirschwang is, or dead or dying town. And there are a lot of towns like Hirschwang in Europe, in Italy and in Spain and Portugal and such, that are where the population have left, but the rail line is still there. There's a
Mm-hmm.
former
Yeah,
hydroelectric
it's a
dam which
great
is not
idea.
being used anymore, and such. So those can be revived under new economic models that may not work for capitalism, but they work just fine for the kinds of purposes that we have in mind for them. So that kind of thing. And of course, we'll be talking about governance and how to
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
design the administration of these systems so that they can be transparent, yet effective, or resilient yet efficient. Those kinds
Yeah,
of
yeah,
those
that
kinds of
is
things.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Um, um, we'll talk
Okay.
about technologies, and how some technologies can possibly assist. So there will be some people who have developed technologies that can serve these kinds of ends, and we'll be learning about those. So anyone who's interested in implementing in their community, well, I would say if they have some experience in that. So many of our members have worked with financial institutions in Europe, like GLS Bank or Raiffeisen Bank or Rabobank, or I mean they're banks, but these are credit unions or ethical banks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so we have a number of people with backgrounds in these kinds of financial institutions coming, municipalities, um, and regional governments, um, and then people who are just, have a deep interest in the space from a religious or philosophical, ethical, political perspective, uh,
Yeah. So
as
you
well.
can attend if you just have an interest in all the space of alternative
Yeah.
currencies, alternative
Yes,
monetary
and we
governance,
still
and so
have
on.
plenty of room. We still have room for about 30 more people to sign up on
Mm-hmm.
our website at collaborative-finance.net.
Yeah.
And
Put that in the
yeah,
description.
that, and so um, then if you have any questions, you can send us an email. If the listeners, of course, have any questions, they can send us an email and say, would this be suitable for me? This is what I want to do. And I should also mention as well too that we hope to have more regional gatherings again. Like 2 collaborative finance events a year is what we've been wanting to have for a long time, because we will have the June event in Austria every year. That's the main
Yeah.
annual flagship event. And then we would like to have regional events in different parts, I would say mainly in Europe, because that's where we find the broadest support. But if there's another part of the world where there's a lot of support for these kinds of monetary and economic systems, then we could consider having a regional event there as well too.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
And Ko-Fi, of course, has a very international participation. I mean, that's great about it as well. I think people coming from all over the world
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we had people come from
join that.
China, Taiwan, Japan, Indonesia, Thailand, from Southeast Asia, and we had a number of people come from North America and Central America, South America, and Europe and Africa as well too. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yes, it's all. But
Yeah.
I would say it's the focus now. I just think that it's for some reason Europe is just a little bit further ahead in this space
Mm.
than the other areas are in general.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay, then let's come to the blockchain.
Mhm. Dun,
Yeah,
dun.
so that has got a bit of a bad press, mainly
Mhm.
because of Bitcoin becoming more a speculative asset, other cryptos as well. But there's much more to it. And there's also a book I have been reading called Blockchain Radicals,
Oh yeah.
uh,
Hmm.
by somebody who has a
Yes.
podcast called The Blockchain Socialist,
Yes.
Joshua Damina.
Joshua. Yeah. Joshua Davila. Yes.
Um, and
Hmm.
it's really, I've almost finished it now, but it's really interesting. And we should talk about your book as well, of course.
Oh sure.
I've
Sure.
read that too.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yes. Maybe, yeah, can you just say what piqued your interest and then the journey, like seeing how
Hmm.
it developed and why do you still believe in it and what do
Right.
you think it could do?
Right.
In
Well,
what
I
ways could
heard
it
about
help?
Bitcoin. I had been working with digital currencies before Bitcoin, and I was involved in the creation of Ripple. Not
Hmm.
technically, that was Ryan Fugger who developed the model
Hmm.
and the code for what became the Ripple, and which was purchased from him by Ripple Labs to become XRP and such.
Yes.
It was a pre-blockchain platform, but it was a way of
Hmm.
doing mutual credit digitally. And
Yes.
so I've been
Yes.
involved in the early technologies behind
Mm.
blockchain and participated in those discussions about the importance of transparency in transactions and immutability, that transactions could not be struck or rewritten, once they were
Yes.
locked
Yes.
into a database
Hmm.
and things like that. And
Hmm.
so I heard about Bitcoin when it came out. I saw it on SourceForge right away because I was already an open source software lover
Hmm.
or user. But I thought it was weird. I didn't understand it. I didn't like it. And so I waited a few years before I became involved in it. And then as I understood it, then it took over my mind a lot more about how, if it's managed well, the limitation of issuance, which I think is very important, especially algorithmic. It can't be controlled. The issuance of Bitcoin cannot be controlled by humans. It's set out by the algorithm of the software program, which is open source and can be viewed by anyone. So I think that's fascinating that we have a multi-trillion-dollar asset whose software layer is not locked behind a corporate firewall, and that there's no CEO or board of directors really calling the shots. I mean, there are people who can kind of call the shots, but they don't have the final word. if the community disagrees. So um, I like that aspect of blockchain technologies, and that it can't be taken by the government, which I think is the most important aspect, because that's what's destroyed. I mean, that's what's taken down the most successful community currency efforts in past years and decades, is just simply being shut down by the federal government, national government, or the
Hmm.
national bank. Whether that was a project that I did in Thailand during the Asian monetary crisis, which was shut down by the Central Bank of
Oh.
Thailand, or what happened during the Great Depression in Germany and Austria, when the central banks of those countries shut down those currency, those local currency systems as well. So in order to survive that battle, we will have to be able to defend the wealth that we create and protect it in a way that can't be taken by the government until they're on our side. But
Hmm.
there's a bit of a hurdle to get over there, yeah, to get over to that point,
Yeah,
which may
yeah.
come. I mean, it depends on us building our economies large enough so that actually means something in terms of affecting how the national economy functions, and then developing proper ethical relations with the government, and if necessary, protecting the wealth that we have generated and are continuing to generate, in the goal of creating a steady state economy which is in harmony with the natural world and sustainability. And if governments don't want to do that, because at the moment they talk like they want to do that, but they don't really want to do that, because of course corporations will revolt on them, and they're more scared of corporations than they are of groups of
Yes.
people. So
Yes.
we have the tools now to be able to direct things the way that we want to direct them, if we choose to take that action. Of course, it's
Hmm.
not up to you or me, and there's no red flags anymore, or black flags waving in the background, right? We're not trying to create a homogenous movement where everyone has to think the same. So in that sense, I guess you could say we're more like, we share more commonality with the black flag than with the red flag. But
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
that's, there, it's open to anyone who wants to move towards a more sustainable future. And I think that's where the
Mm.
that's where the
Yeah.
defining point really is, rather than saying, oh, you have to be a socialist or an anarchist or a leftist to
Yes,
join this. Because
definitely.
as we know from blockchain technologies, there are not that many blockchain radicals actually out in the blockchain space. It's a
Mm.
significant minority across the board, in fact. Mhm.
Mm. But it's a significant minority.
It's growing
Um,
because we are
yeah.
reaching out and finding each other and starting to build our tools together, right?
Mm.
But it's
And
tiny. Not a significant majority. No, I think we're still less than
oh.
5% of, I would say, people with thinking about blockchain in these ways make up about 5% or less of all blockchain users in the world.
Hmm. But that is still not, yeah, so few. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
5% of all blockchain users,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think. But it's one of the main obstacles, maybe, to really convince people who are not into tech to take part
Yeah.
in,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's been because it's
community
the
currency
technology is
projects.
at such an early stage. It still requires a change in thinking about how we use computers, and of course that's what corporations want, right? Corporations want us to know as little about computers as possible. They want us to know as little about finance and money and banking and how it's created and how it's being wielded against us. They want us to know as little as possible so that we're powerless to be able to make any changes, right? So yes, I can
Hmm.
understand that when someone opens up YouTube, they see a lot of videos about how Bitcoin is a scam, and they read in the news that these people have been hacked or have done there's all these criminals in jail that Trump has pardoned for their criminal behavior using cryptocurrencies and blockchain. blockchain technologies. And
Mm.
that's awful. But there are a lot of greedy, selfish, awful people in the world. Not only in the blockchain sector, but in the regular world as well. Yeah, it's almost
Hmm.
this. You could
Yeah.
say it's almost the same, right? It's like Pareto's law, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
So that's why we need to create systems that are, yeah, co-governed and are transparent.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
And can you see a way how, like, somebody who, let's say, a community living on the land, how could they use something like that? So, if there was an interface of, let's say, there are people who know about the technology and can explain it in a
Yeah.
good way, do you think they might be able to? Convince people. And I don't want to say everybody living on
Oh,
the land is not tech savvy. There are lots
right.
of
Yeah.
people
No, that's why we have
who
solar punk.
are.
Yes, there's solar punks where
Solar punk.
they're very
Yeah,
advanced with
yeah,
their with energy generation
yeah,
and
yeah,
and in other applications of technologies, which are also in a large to a large part also being suppressed, right? In a lot of
yeah,
places, and
yeah,
people have to learn about water and wind and solar power technologies pretty much by themselves, right? And
yeah,
like
yeah.
here in Indonesia, it's the government actively opposes the use of solar power, right?
It
Hmm.
opposes the use of
Yeah,
solar power.
yeah, actively. So you take a lot of risks when you can buy solar panels on the market. They haven't outlawed them. They haven't gone to that extent, but they make it difficult in every other way to have solar power in a country which has, which is close to the equator and has sun, most of the time, very hot sun.
Yeah, maybe let's talk about your book a
Yeah,
bit as
sure.
well. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's again a lot in it, and yeah, I
Our book is similar to Blockchain Radicals in a way, and to a number of other books that have come out in the space in recent years. Um, it's in that we are discussing how to get towards a better world that we know is possible. And
Mhm.
we take a lot of inspiration from Bernard Lietaer and Margaret Kennedy and Jim Bendell, who wrote a book on climate
Mhm.
collapse called Breaking Together, and Michelle
Yes.
Bowens, who's in
Yeah,
Thailand and writes the Fourth Generation
of course.
Civilization
Yeah, yeah.
blog on Substack, and has been talking about how to change the mode of production for a long time. And so we look
Hmm.
at those kinds of what these people have been saying, and then bring in
Hmm.
Buckminster Fuller and E.F. Schumacher and the really big names, because I think
Hmm.
many more people know Buckminster Fuller, E.F. Schumacher than they do, Bernard Lietaer or Margaret Kennedy and such, right? Because
Hmm.
they provide a very solid grounding in the foundational philosophy of why we need to do what we're doing and how to do it right. And so we
Hmm.
draw a lot from them on applying indigenous wisdom, which is, whether that's how things used to be in Europe, when, for your grandparents and great grandparents, or in
Yes.
Canada, where I'm from, with my grandparents and great grandparents, how they lived. Or we
Hmm.
can go back, we can go back 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years, and look at how societies functioned and
Hmm.
what elements of how those societies functioned do we still know about today, and how do we encode those into economic and monetary systems that we use. Because those will
Yes.
have the most
Yes.
resonance with how our life works. We will know innately, we will feel, oh, yes, this makes sense.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
rather than saying, wow, this seems really alien to me. And
Hmm.
when we can
Hmm.
make blockchain technology feel like that, then people will feel like it's something that they can use, and it's not something that's completely alien to them, like something that has just come from outer space, brought here
Yes.
by aliens, um, that kind of thing, but actually relates to how we really used to operate economically. And actually, there are a lot of similarities in blockchain technologies with that, with those ancient ideas.
that is an interesting point. Yeah,
Mhm.
that the
So we draw
blockchain
that, we make that,
technology
we
could.
draw that line directly in the book. It might not be easy to see, but we hope it's at least seen between the lines. And
Hmm.
one other author that we use for that is David Graeber, and especially in
Yeah,
his
yeah.
book Debt: The First 5,000 Years, and in the Dawn of Everything, which is a huge book, but it's really amazing in how it takes ancient anthropology and archaeology and helps us to realize that we didn't have just one type of economic system in ancient human society. We had many different kinds. We had many different kinds of government. We had many different kinds of leadership. We had many different kinds of mobility. Uh, some leaders then would allow people to walk away if they didn't agree, or some wouldn't. And some
Yeah.
people could get on a boat and sail, and some people had to walk, and some people had to go, get in a canoe and go down a river to escape whatever society had gone toxic for them, which is something that we're not able to do now. We can't say, oh, I don't like what's happening here in Canada and I want to go to Indonesia. Well, they make it, governments make it extremely difficult. Now you have to be
Mm.
a taxpayer in some country of the world. You have no freedom to be a non-tax paying human being on Earth right now, right?
Yes,
Everywhere you
yes, it's a
go, you've got to
global
be, yeah, everywhere you
system.
go, you've got to be registered as paying the government, paying some government money, right? And they impose that on each other to make sure that that
Hmm.
happens, so that they keep each other all, in business, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So we talk about
So
that in the
yeah.
book, and
Mm.
what needs to be dismantled, or rearranged, and how we can go about doing that, and what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we may be facing that will force us to do that. And we think that the climate crisis is really what that challenge and opportunity is going to be. Um, I was watching a TV program the other night about how temperatures in Thailand would be above 35 degrees only maybe 5 days out of the year. And now it's almost 60 days out of the year where the temperature is above 35 degrees somewhere, anywhere in Thailand as a country. And that
Mhm.
they're already facing temperatures of 60 degrees Celsius, which is becoming unbearable. So it becomes kind of like I mean, we're faced with a possibility in the near term of an event, kind of like what Kim Stanley Robinson wrote about in his science fiction book, and which is
And what is that? I don't know that book.
oh, what is that? What is that book? I would have
No,
to
but what
Google
is
it.
the event
Oh,
that
it's
is
a
happening?
wet bulb event where the combination of heat and humidity becomes so high that people die by the thousands, and or the
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands. And so that's the catalyst in Kim Stanley Robinson's book. It should be right there because it's an excellent book and worth reading. And the
Yeah.
steps that people who experienced it, or whose job it was to protect humanity, as staff of the United Nations, how they failed to do that, and the reasons for that failure, which is basically government ignorance of the situation because it didn't serve them, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's
Yeah, which sounds
I
like
heard
to
I
the.
heard a saying also recently that it's hard to get um, someone to see something if unless their salary depends on it, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
so if the
Yeah.
government is not
Mhm.
making money from the climate crisis, it's going to be very hard for them to actually take a look at it. And
Mm.
that's kind of the stone that the builders are refusing right now, right? They're
Mm.
ignoring
Yeah.
mostly ignoring the climate crisis
Yeah.
in a core way, but they're just saying, oh, well, we'll provide some rooms that have water and air conditioning in them, and we'll show people where they can escape to if they're having a heat stroke emergency. But when it comes to whether or not we should grow more trees or ban cars or something like that. Well, we can't go there because corporations would get upset, right?
Mm, Yeah, you could also say it's the climate crisis is acknowledged in some ways, but then turned again into something that the industry can use, like carbon offsets and things like that. Yeah,
Right, right,
maybe.
absolutely right. Mhm, mhm,
What was I gonna ask now? I think we've almost come to the end. I wanted to ask something
mhm,
specific about the book as well. Yeah, so that it is actually a lot also about the social side of things, right?
mhm,
How you govern things, and because that is an important aspect that, yeah, it is a real democracy.
mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah,
not
as I
too
was
hierarchical governance and so on.
right, right. As I was mentioning in the beginning of our conversation today, um, I was talking about how important governance actually is, and
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
little people actually think about it because they're busy thinking, "Ooh, this new money experiment is exciting," and it's let's just design,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
currency,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and yet then they go into a meeting and they say, "Okay, well, do you second my motion?" Using Robert's rules or some old-fashioned form of governance where they say, "No, I created this system. You do what I tell you. I don't care what you
Hmm.
think. I created this. If you don't like it, go somewhere else," which is actually what
Hmm.
happens in community currency systems, because people
Hmm.
don't know that there are actually better ways of doing governance. And so we
Hmm.
have seen a lot of systems collapse because of this kind of toxic governance behavior. And so, I mean, that's just one of many reasons, a community currency system can collapse. But we we can at least solve for some of these problems. Like we have solutions here, and my co-author of the book Pathways to Regeneration, his name is Scott Morris. We'd be more than glad to come and talk to any communities. And I say this in every podcast or in conversation I have. We'd be happy to talk with any um, uh, you say representative of a municipality or regional government, or even larger scale or lower scale neighborhood.
Hmm.
If you're in a neighborhood government and are interested in implementing these kinds of systems, reach out to us, and
Hmm.
we'd be love to do what we can to assist and make sure it's done right so that it has the best chance of surviving. Because we've been at this for I've been at this for 35 years. There have been people like my colleague Thomas Greco, who's in his 80s now, who've been doing this for way longer. He was friends with E.F. Schumacher and Bob Swan and Susan Witt in America. From that side, and of course there are many people in Europe who are 10, I'm nearly 60. So there are people who are 10, 20, 30 years older than I am with even more experience that also have been through this
Yes.
enough times to know how to do it right. So I'm not trying to say that I'm the
Mm.
only person or this is an innovation that, that kind of thing. I'm not
Hmm.
trying to sell myself as being the only solution to this. There's actually a lot of people that have an important contribution to make to helping these
Yeah.
systems to get started properly.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Mhm.
that's really good to have a variety of opinions. But yeah, the message, I guess, is to, yeah, not just start and also don't dictate things, but yeah, talk to people who have done this before and
Yeah,
have been doing this for a long time. And
I can't
otherwise,
stress that more than, I can't stress that enough because that's what often
mm,
happens. We often find out about these systems once they're collapsing. And we
mhm,
say, oh,
mhm,
we didn't know that there was a system there. No one had ever contacted us, right? And
mm,
so when we
mm,
saw like the Bristol pound was a very big collapse several years ago, and then I was like, oh, that's too bad. They never reached out to me. I still had
mhm,
25 years experience then. They didn't reach out to my
mhm,
colleagues. That's too bad.
mm.
Maybe we could have done
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that would have helped it to survive. instead of reading the postmortem book. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've read that as well. Yeah. And
Yes.
yeah, it's interesting. There was so much enthusiasm and yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. It's
that's
wonderful
right.
people. I'm not criticizing the people personally one bit. They're very kind, generous, have huge hearts. But they thought they knew what they were doing and they didn't.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Sad. Hmm.
okay.
Hmm. But it's a good
Yeah.
example, and it's important that we be honest and open about these kinds of things that have happened, right? Rather than say, "Oh, well, we shouldn't talk about failure." No, whereas, on the
Mm,
contrary, we really should talk about failure and
mm.
why these things happen, and so that we can be, collective in how we develop responses to it, right?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And I think Diana Finch has also said if anybody wants to try something like that again, to reach out to her. And yeah,
Yeah.
she only came in towards the end anyway.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Mm.
And yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. So maybe as a last point, anybody who doesn't know very much about community currencies or the monetary system, finance system, what
Hmm.
can you recommend an easy entry point, how to
Um,
learn about these things?
well, I really think it's in books.
Mm.
So I would read Bernard Lietter's Rethinking Money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really
Yes.
wonderful book that
Mm-hmm.
gently introduces the concepts, the philosophy, the mechanisms, and so on. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, then I would suggest finding the book People Powered Money by
Mm-hmm.
the New Economics Foundation in the
Mm-hmm.
UK. It's a That book was written by a whole large group of practitioners across Europe about 10, 15 years ago. Many
Mm-hmm.
colleagues of
Okay.
mine, I wasn't involved in that project, but many of my colleagues were, and I think it's an excellent piece of work in explaining, in even more detailed terms about how to implement community currencies, but it's just a bit out of date because it is before blockchain technologies. And so
Okay.
then
Mm.
that if you can survive reading those two books, then you should already be at a point where you can start finding your way and knowing what questions to ask to find people and resources around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or just contact
Okay.
you, Katja. And
Ah, yeah, I also have some book
yeah,
recommendations from
yeah.
my
What would
side,
you
like this.
recommend? What
Um,
would your top recommendations be?
yeah, I think the book that Esther Barinaga
Oh
wrote,
yes. Hmm.
which is Remaking Money for a Sustainable Future, Money
Yep.
Commons.
Yep. That
I
just came
think
out, what,
that
6 months ago, isn't that right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that is also available for free, yeah,
Yeah.
as an ebook or PDF.
Yeah. As is
Um,
ours. Yeah. As is people powered
yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah, yours
Yeah.
as well,
These are
and we
all
put a
free.
link
Yeah.
in the
Hmm.
description.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would recommend yours as well.
Hmm.
No, I really got a lot out of that as well.
Yeah.
And for money history, there's a book that came out in 2013 by Felix Martin called Money, the Unauthorized Biography.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it is called
Hmm.
something like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. I've heard of it.
Yeah. And I think as a website, moneta.org
Hmm.
is quite good. And that
Hmm.
is one that Margaret Kennedy founded. And I just saw yesterday that they have quite a good explanation on the homepage what is wrong with the money system and
Yeah.
then the various different approaches to tackle it. Uh, yeah.
Great. And I would also recommend Breaking Together by
Oh,
Jem
yeah, I read
Gardell as
that as
well.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
has
there's chapter two is all about the money system, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he covers the reasoning for why we need to change the monetary system as soon as possible in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think all of those books are actually the best way to start rather than, I mean, yeah, Moneta's website too, of course. Yeah. I can't really think
Yeah,
of
there are
other
probably other websites. I
websites.
just happened to be there
Yeah,
yesterday and
I
thought,
I
oh,
don't
that's
think so because what will happen, those websites are created out of a more specific interest than a book, right? A book needs to appeal
mm,
to a wide range of possible readers, whereas a website might take you down the wrong path. And so,
yeah.
you need to find Moneta is a broad enough path. But other ones, you run the risk of becoming quite focused on transition town movements or mutual credit systems or credit common systems that use very specific
Mm,
types of,
mm,
whereas, as you
yeah.
know, or as you may not know, there is a strong movement, tendency towards monetary diversity, and that, as Bernard Lietaer was a great big fan of, not just the duality between competitive
Yes,
and
yes,
cooperative currencies, but a multiplicity of currencies, each fulfilling specific roles that they're best designed to do, right? And
yes,
this is
yes.
actually what economists say. Economists say
Mm,
that monetary systems should be designed to achieve, like they should be efficient in the ways they achieve what they're best at achieving, and not be
yes,
used in
yes,
ways that they are not best at, or most efficient at achieving. But we treat it like they are, like the money system there should only be one currency, but in fact there should be at least two or five or 10 or 20 different currencies
yeah,
circulating
yeah,
at the same time, all for different purposes. And I've seen that
yes,
in
yes.
real world contexts, and it works very, very well.
Oh,
It
yeah,
actually
that
does.
is
It
really
seems like
interesting.
people think, oh, I'd be completely confused in a world with 10 different currencies in my wallet or in my phone. And actually, no, no, not
Hmm.
really. You get used to it. You'll sort it out very, very fast. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
will be interesting to see what the future will bring.
Yes. Always looking forward to it.
Um, yeah, okay, so yeah, I think we can probably finish here. We've
Great.
covered a lot of ground, and thank you so much for joining me. It's been really interesting talking to you. Yeah, and I'll see you in June,
Yes, thank you very
and
much,
maybe
Katja,
online before that.
and see enjoyable conversation. I hope your listeners enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing their comments. And yes, I'll see you at the end of June in Hirschwang in Austria, at the Collaborative
Okay,
Finance Gathering.
okay, bye.
Bye.